The grassroots election integrity team getting results by pulling back the curtain on what they call Minnesota's hidden election system. Derek Lind is a financial analyst and a member of ACEIT, the Anoka County election integrity team. Nice to see you again, Derek. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Liz. We really appreciate it.
You know, Alpha News spoke to your group a few months ago about the work you've been doing within Anoka County. But want to start there just for some background, the mission behind ACEIT. Explain for our audience what it is you guys are trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, so after the 2020 election, a bunch of people came together from throughout the state to kind of look into our election system and try to get educated on what was going on and improvements that we could make. That was kind of started by Rick Weibel. And so we were meeting up in the northern suburbs, and then eventually we all kind of split up into chapters throughout the counties. And we started an Anoka County chapter with about 4 people. And that was over 2 years ago. And since that time, we've grown to 20 people. And we're focusing primarily on just trying to secure our elections at the local level in Anoka County. That's been the primary focus. So when we first got started, we focused most of our time at the county level because the county has a lot of power. Anoka County is the 4th largest county. There's about 360,000 people here, and it's represented by 7 commissioners, and they have a lot of power. And so that's why we focus there. And we spent about 9 months there, bringing them information, doing presentations and things like that. And we were unable to persuade them. They basically said that they thought there was a problem in the state, but not in the county. And so what we did at the beginning of this year, 2024, is we pivoted to the city level. We visited all 21 cities, and I got some stats for you here that I think are pretty compelling. We basically went to the open forums at these cities, and we said, hey, we think we might have some issues with our elections here, and we have some ideas as to how to make them more secure. And 11 out of 21 cities invited us back to do presentations. I think that right there shows that there's an appetite for us to do more with our election system. Of those 11 cities, 7 of them actually passed resolutions to extend the post-election review. What the post-election review is, after the election, the county, there's right now under the current system, they're supposed to sample 4 precincts. That's the state mandate. Just to check to see if the machines are working properly. There's 128 precincts in Anoka County. And of those 128 precincts, they only check 4. And so what we asked the cities to do was to extend that. We view the statute as though there's no limit. They can do as many as they want. They have to be, it gets kind of confusing, and I don't want to get into the weeds on the statute language, but our view was 4 was the minimum, but there really was no maximum. And so we asked these cities to extend the post-election review, and we got 7 cities to come forward and do it, and it was a total of, I think it was 17 precincts. So what that basically is, probably the best way to describe it is they're auditing the votes. So right now under the current system, we stick the ballot in the machine counts the votes, and then that's it. The election's over. But under this system, we're going to check it twice. We're going to have the machine count the votes, and then we're going to check it again by hand. So it's just a way to audit the votes. We had some leaders at the city level step forward, and they had some really good comments. Weston Rolfe from the city of Oak Grove, he said, nobody can prove to me that the machine counted the votes accurately on election day. The only way to know that for sure is to go in and count it by hand. Deb Musgrove from Ramsey said, we double check everything. Why wouldn't we double check the counting of our votes? And another mayor said, we spend millions of dollars on our city budgets. Why wouldn't we spend, a few $1,000s to double check our votes? These are very important. So this was a very important step we took, and we were surprised at the response at the city level. The cities were basically thanking us for showing up. They wanted to do something. There was an appetite to do more with securing our election. So we couldn't get anywhere with the county, but we had a lot of success at the city level.
So speaking of that success with these 7 cities, in addition to a post-election review, the Oak Grove City Council then passed a resolution to do away with those electronic poll pads. What concerns do you have with that technology? And then also get us up to speed on that situation that has now unfolded in Oak Grove, because this certainly has not been easy.
The best way to secure elections is to go back to paper and be open to the public and transparent. And believe it or not, paper poll pads is the best way to accomplish that. When you have a paper poll pad, that can't be changed. It's just paper that's printed out, people sign their names, and that's something that can be audited. We brought these electronic poll pads in 2018, and really don't know a whole lot about them. So Oak Grove on September 30th, they voted 4-0 to get rid of the electronic poll pads. And what we're learning from the cities, I think there's an appetite for this from other cities. What we're learning is they don't really love these poll pads. They remember using paper. They thought the paper worked fine, and they want to go back to that. Another big issue with the poll pad is when I go in and I register at my precinct and I hit that electronic poll pad, that data can go out the door, and now people know that I've voted. And it's kind of a way to keep track. But if you go back to the paper poll pads, nobody knows who's voted until the election's over. So that's a big deal. What we're hearing from the county is, actually, we just found out this week, the county told Oak Grove they're not going to be able to do that. And the reason this discussion is very important is because, we could spend a whole segment just talking about Oak Grove doesn't want to use the poll pads. Why would the county force them to use it if they don't want to do that? That's a big deal in itself. But our view is actually that the county is wrong on this. They're pointing to a statute. It's statute 201.225, and they're claiming that they are the head election authority. And our view of that statute is that the city is actually the head election authority. Now, we're not lawyers, we don't give legal advice, but we would encourage all cities to look at that statute. Our view is that the cities have the power to get rid of the poll pads. So we're going to let those guys sort that out. We're not sure what Oak Grove is going to do, but that's a situation that's developing. But that wasn't the only city that was interested in getting rid of those poll pads. So I would say those two things. The data goes out the door. Paper poll pads are more secure. It's something that we feel we have to go back to. So we had 7 cities pass these post-election reviews, and what we're hearing from multiple sources, in fact, from even the chairman of the Anoka County Board himself, he's on recording saying that they're not going to let these cities do these post-election reviews. Now, ultimately, that's going to be decided at the canvassing board meeting, which takes place on Wednesday, November 13th at 2 p.m. So we're going to ask a lot of people to be there at that meeting at the county, because there's going to be 5 people that are going to decide whether or not these cities get to hand count or audit their votes. Those 5 people are there's 2 county commissioners. It'd be Jeff Reinert and Julie Brosted. It would be the mayor of Blaine. I believe his name is Tim Sanders. And then there would be 2 county people. And so we think politics will be involved. If the vote doesn't go our way, there's going to be a political consequence to that. The other thing I want to say that we learned that was really interesting was we would go into these cities and we would convince the council people that they could make these changes. They were sensible, reasonable, they were inexpensive, and they were important changes to make. Staff would stop them. Staff would push back. And there could be a number of reasons for that. Maybe the staff didn't want to do the work, or maybe they didn't agree with us. I think what happens a lot is staff picks up the phone and calls the county and says, these guys are at our city. They're asking us to make these changes. What do you think? And I think the county says, tell them no. And I think oftentimes the county calls the Secretary of State, and I don't think he agrees with us either. So we've got kind of a fundamental debate going on here. Who controls the process of the elections? Is it the people? Is it the council? Or is it the staff? And there's a real imbalance there, because a lot of times as staff, these are professional people. They're well paid. They're experienced. They've been there a long time. And a lot of city council people have been there for a couple of years. They're making $500 a month, and they just defer to the staff. What do you think? So my point or my question, and this is a big deal, is what say do the people have? Because it's our job to have a political process where we can convince the politicians that they need to do this. So the city of Oak Grove is a great example of a strong council, and they had a good staff too. But they basically said these changes are reasonable and we want to do them and we think it'll help secure our elections. And that's why they passed. They were the first one to pass the resolution to extend the PER. That was 4 precincts. They're going to do all 4 and they're going to go all the way down the ballot. So they're basically going to audit every single vote that's contested. And they had no problem paying for it. There's only 8,000 people in that city. And then they said we don't need to use these electronic poll pads. We're going to go back to paper. They're more secure. They don't want that data going out the door. They didn't love these poll pads. And so for Anoka County now to tell them you have to use these poll pads, that's a debate we need to be having, across the state. The city should be in charge. And by the way, one thing about the poll pads, I think it's 28 counties don't use them right now at all. And then there's another percentage of counties that are mixed, like right across the highway to the north of us in Asante. They've got 17 precincts that don't use poll pads and electronic poll pads, and 2 of them that do. So it's not like statewide everybody has to use these electronic poll pads. So the question is, why would Anoka County care whether or not Oak Grove uses electronic poll pads? Furthermore, our view or our position is that it's Oak Grove's decision to make. We disagree with the county when they say that they have the authority. They're pointing to statute 201.225. And our view of that statute is that the city actually has the authority to decide whether or not they want to use those poll pads. So the other thing I want to mention too, it's not just in Anoka County where this is happening. There's groups in other counties and we work with them too. And they're basically doing the same stuff. They're trying to get their cities to audit their votes by hand, like the 7 are choosing to do here in Anoka County, and then they're also talking to them about the poll pads.
In response to issues ACEIT has raised, the Minnesota Secretary of State's office under Democrat Steve Simon has said that the ballot tabulators are considered best practice and the equipment is certified by federal and state experts, and that the office routinely advocates for updates on election laws as they learn new information on best practices. So that's a statement from the Secretary of State's office just on the machines in general. But how much of this, now that you've been involved for a couple of years, is a state issue, and how much can really then be changed, on a local level here?
That's a good question. We got a saying now we call the Oak Grove way. We think that if Oak Grove does, or cities like Oak Grove do 3 things, they can really help secure their elections right now, even with the existing laws. The first is audit your hand count, audit your votes by hand count. So on election day, run the votes through the machine, and then afterwards during the post-election review, go back and make sure you got the same total. Okay, so a hand count audit. By the way, that post-election review, the Canvass Board meets on November 13th. We'll get into that in a second here. But so the first thing is audit your votes. The second thing is go back to paper poll pads. And the third thing is, which we haven't even spent any time on yet, is deal with the mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots right now are processed at the county level. We would probably have the cities do that. I think there is one city in Minnesota that has done that. So basically those 3 things, if you do those 3 things, you make it really hard to have any kind of cheating in your city or at the city level. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I think a lot of people think that, perhaps this is a lost cause, and we have seen a lot of this move at the state legislature, the level there. But you really are showing that results are happening on the local level. But big picture here, you guys are asking, it sounds good, right? Simple, locally controlled, transparent elections. But of course, you're labeled then as election deniers. I know the media has not been kind to your group. What do you make, though, of that question? We hear it again and again on repeat. Do you accept the election results of 2020? Why is this so controversial? As I've said, you guys have seen your share of pushback as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So 2020 is what motivated us to get involved in this process and start taking a closer look. But we're looking forward. We're not looking to do anything with the 2020 results. We're looking for future elections. An election should do 2 things. It should measure the will of the people. That's the first thing. It should accurately measure the will of the people. And secondly, it should be something that we can all trust the results from. When the election's over, we should be able to look at it and say, well, those are the results. And that's the piece that's missing today. The Rasmussen poll was saying that 2/3 of the country has issues with the election results right now. that means we got to do something to tweak this system. So when the Secretary of State says this is the best system, why are all of these cities, why is there an appetite at all of these cities for us to do more? They're obviously not content with the current system. So we're just, like I said, we were surprised at how popular we were with the cities when we went in, or the response that we got from them. And so I think that speaks for itself.
I think so too. Well, Derek Lynn with the Anoka County Election Integrity Team, known as ACEIT. Thank you so much for your work, and thanks for your time talking today.
Thanks, Liz.
That'll do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.